The heavy wooden door groans as it swings open, breaking decades of silence. Inside the stone barn, shafts of golden afternoon light pierce through gaps in the collapsed roof, illuminating dust particles that dance in the still air like tiny spirits. The CEO stands at the threshold, designer heels sinking into mud, her tailored suit jacket draped over one arm, staring at the crumbling structure she just purchased with money that once meant power, but now means nothing. Walls of ancient stone, some dating back 200 years, lean precariously inward. The floor is covered in debris, rotted beams, bird nests, broken glass, decades of abandonment. This barn, forgotten on the edge of a small rural town 3 hours from the city where she built her empire, looks like the last place anyone would choose to start over. But she isn't looking to start over. She's looking to disappear. What she doesn't know yet is that in the process of rebuilding these crumbling walls, stone by stone, with her own hands, she will find something she spent 30 years chasing in boardrooms and never found: peace. If you're fascinated by stories of transformation and places forgotten by time, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any exploration. Now let me tell you how we got here and why this woman, who once commanded a Fortune 500 company, is standing in a ruined barn with tears streaming down her face. This stone barn sits on 12 acres of overgrown land in the countryside of upstate New York, 17 miles from the nearest town of any significance. The property has been abandoned for 43 years, ever since the farming family that owned it for 5 generations finally gave up and moved to the city in 1981. The barn was built in 1847 by Irish immigrants who cleared the land by hand, quarried the stone from the nearby hillside, and constructed these walls to last centuries. It was the heart of a working dairy farm, housing cattle on the ground floor, hay in the loft above, tools and equipment in the side sheds. For over a century, this barn witnessed the rhythm of agricultural life: births and deaths of animals, harvests celebrated and droughts endured, children growing up learning to work the land, families gathering for barn dances on summer evenings. But like so many small farms in America, this one couldn't survive the industrialization of agriculture. By the 1970s, the family was struggling. The children had moved away, seeking easier lives in cities. The parents, aging and exhausted, finally sold what livestock remained and left. They intended to sell the property, but the market was bad, the location too remote, the buildings too deteriorated. So it sat, and sat, and sat. 43 years of weather, vandalism and neglect slowly pulled the barn toward the earth. The woman standing at its entrance now is named Catherine Wells, 52 years old, widow. Former CEO of a tech company she built from nothing in her garage 28 years ago. She grew that company into a billion-dollar enterprise, employed 3,000 people, was featured on magazine covers, gave TED Talks, was called a visionary, a disruptor, a role model for women in business. She had everything the world told her to want: wealth, power, influence, respect. She also had a husband, Michael. They met in college, married young, built the company together in those early years when it was just the two of them and a dream. He was the steady one, the calm to her storm, the person who reminded her why they were doing this when the stress became overwhelming. They always said they'd slow down eventually, travel the world, buy a house in the countryside, grow old together watching sunsets. Eventually, when the company was stable, when they had enough, when the time was right. But eventually never came. The company grew faster than they could control. Catherine became CEO, Michael took a step back to handle operations. The work consumed everything: 18-hour days, constant travel, board meetings, investor calls, product launches, crisis management. They saw each other in passing, communicated through assistants, promised each other it would slow down soon, next quarter, next year, after the IPO. 3 years ago, Michael collapsed in his office. Massive heart attack. He was 49 years old. By the time Catherine got to the hospital, he was gone, just gone. No warning, no goodbye, no eventually. The grief nearly destroyed her. But Catherine did what she always did. She worked. Threw herself into the company even harder, as if staying busy could outrun the pain. For 2 years, she functioned on autopilot. Meetings, decisions, strategies, all performed with mechanical precision, while inside, she felt nothing. Her therapist called it complicated grief. Her friends called it worrying. Her board called it impressive dedication. But 6 months ago, something broke. She was in a board meeting presenting quarterly results, excellent results. The company was thriving, and mid-sentence, she stopped, just stopped talking, looked around the table at these people in expensive suits discussing profit margins and market share, and thought, what is any of this for? Michael was dead. She had more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. The company would continue with or without her, and she was so tired. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, tired in her bones, in her soul. She finished the meeting, went back to her office, and wrote her resignation letter, effective immediately. The board was shocked. The media speculated health problems, scandal, burnout. She didn't explain. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. She just left. Sold her shares, set up trusts for employees and charities, and walked away from everything she'd built. For weeks, she did nothing. Sat in the penthouse apartment she and Michael had bought but barely lived in, surrounded by expensive furniture and art they'd never had time to enjoy, and felt the silence press down on her like a physical weight. The city that once energized her now felt suffocating. The apartment felt like a museum to a life that no longer existed. She needed to leave. Needed to go somewhere completely different, somewhere Michael had never been, so she wouldn't see his ghost in every corner. Somewhere she could figure out who Catherine Wells was when she wasn't a CEO, wasn't building something, wasn't performing for the world. She started searching online, not really knowing what she was looking for. Rural properties, old houses, farms, something far from the city, far from her old life. And then she found the listing, historic stone barn on 12 acres, needs complete restoration, sold as is. The photos showed a beautiful ruin, ancient stone walls, dramatic countryside, total isolation. The price was absurdly low because the structure was barely standing. Most buyers would see it as a teardown, worth only the land value. But Catherine saw something else. She saw a project, not a business project with spreadsheets and projections, but something physical, tangible, real. Something she could build with her hands, something that had no shareholders, no employees depending on her, no pressure except what she put on herself. And maybe, in the process of rebuilding something broken, she could rebuild herself. She bought it sight unseen. Her lawyer thought she was having a breakdown. Her friends thought she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. But for the first time in 3 years, she felt something other than numbness. She felt curious. She felt a tiny spark of purpose. Now she stands here, looking at what she's actually bought, and the reality is more daunting than the photos suggested. The barn is roughly 60 feet long and 40 feet wide, 2 stories tall, with walls of stacked stone held together by ancient mortar that's crumbling in many places. The roof has partially collapsed, maybe a third of it is gone, leaving the interior exposed to weather. The massive wooden beams that support the structure are still intact in some areas, but rotted through in others. The floor is dirt covered in debris. There are no windows left, just empty openings. The large doors that once allowed tractors and cattle to enter hang askew on broken hinges. But as she walks slowly around the perimeter, she also sees the bones of something magnificent. The craftsmanship of those stone walls, each stone carefully selected and placed, fitted together like a puzzle, without modern tools or machinery. The massive hand-hewn beams, some over a foot thick, cut from old-growth timber that doesn't exist anymore. The proportions of the structure, the way it sits in the landscape, the view from the doorway across rolling hills that stretch to the horizon. This barn was built by people who cared, who intended it to last, who put their sweat and skill into every stone. As she approaches the entrance, she notices details that don't quite fit. Fresh tire tracks in the mud leading to the barn, recent, maybe from the last few days. A section of the stone wall near the back has been recently disturbed, stones moved and restacked, though not by a professional. Inside, when she steps through the doorway, she sees evidence that someone has been here. A circle of stones arranged for a fire, empty food cans in the corner, a tattered sleeping bag stuffed behind a fallen beam. Her heart rate quickens. Squatters, vandals. The real estate agent mentioned the property had been empty for decades, but clearly someone has been using it. She feels a mix of apprehension and something else, curiosity. Who would come here? Why? She moves deeper into the barn, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The ground floor is one large open space, divided by the massive support posts that rise to the ceiling. In the corners, old farming equipment rusts away, a broken plow, metal milk cans, tools she can't identify. Against one wall, a wooden ladder leads up to what remains of the hayloft. The ladder looks ancient, half the rungs missing or rotted through. But there's another ladder too, a newer aluminum one, propped against the wall near the back. Someone brought that here recently. Catherine approaches it, looks up to where it leads. The loft is partially intact, the floor sagging but still there. Against every instinct of self-preservation, she starts to climb. The ladder is stable. Someone has been using it regularly. At the top, she pulls herself onto the loft floor carefully, testing each board before putting her weight on it. The loft is smaller than the ground floor, maybe half the barn's length, the rest having collapsed years ago. But in the intact section, she finds something unexpected. A living space. Makeshift, but organized. A sleeping bag on a pallet of hay. Plastic storage bins containing clothes, books, supplies. A battery-powered lantern. A small camping stove. This isn't just someone passing through. Someone is living here. On a wooden crate serving as a table, she finds a notebook. She knows she shouldn't look. It's an invasion of privacy, but she can't help herself. Opens it to a random page and reads, Day 47. The barn is peaceful today. I fixed the section of wall on the north side. Took me all afternoon to find stones that fit, but I think it'll hold. Sometimes I wonder if I'm crazy, living in a ruin. But then I remember what I left behind, and I know I made the right choice. This place doesn't judge. It doesn't demand. It just exists. And lets me exist too. Catherine closes the notebook, a lump forming in her throat. Whoever wrote this, they're running from something too. They found refuge in this broken place, just like she's hoping to. She feels an unexpected kinship with this unknown person. She climbs back down, walks outside, and sits on a large flat stone near the entrance. The afternoon sun is warm on her face. The only sounds are birds, wind in the trees, and the distant bleating of sheep from a neighboring farm. No traffic. No phones ringing, no demands, just silence. Real silence, the kind she hasn't experienced in 30 years. She sits there for an hour, maybe more, just breathing, just being. And slowly, something inside her begins to unclench. The constant tension she's carried for so long, in her shoulders, her jaw, her chest, starts to release. She realizes she's been holding her breath for 3 years, maybe longer. Here, finally, she can exhale. As the sun begins to lower, she hears footsteps. Turns to see a figure approaching across the field. A woman, maybe mid-30s, wearing work clothes and boots, carrying a backpack. The woman stops when she sees Catherine, clearly surprised and wary. They look at each other for a long moment. Then Catherine says simply, "I'm the new owner." I bought the property last month. The woman's face falls. I'm sorry. I didn't know it sold. I'll pack my things and leave. I wasn't hurting anything, I just needed somewhere to... Her voice cracks. Wait, Catherine says. You don't have to leave. Not yet. I'm not moving in immediately. I'm going to restore the barn, but that'll take months, maybe a year. And I could use help. Do you know anything about stonemasonry? Carpentry? Building? The woman looks suspicious, like this might be a trap. Some. I worked construction before everything fell apart. Lost my job, then my apartment, then... Well, I've been here about 2 months. I've been trying to fix small things to earn my keep, even though nobody was here to see. I saw the wall you repaired, Catherine says. Good work. What's your name? Jamie. I'm Catherine. Here's what I'm thinking, Jamie. I have money, but no skills. You have skills, but no money. I need to learn how to rebuild this barn, and I need help doing it. I can't pay you much, but I can pay you something, and you can stay in the loft until we rebuild it into something better. What do you say? Jamie stares at her like she's speaking a foreign language. You're serious? You'd let me stay? Let me help? I'm serious. I don't know what I'm doing, Jamie. I've never built anything with my hands in my life. I've spent 30 years in boardrooms and offices, and I'm good at that, but this, she gestures at the barn, this is completely foreign. I need a teacher, and maybe you need a fresh start. We can help each other. For the first time, Jamie smiles. It's a small, hesitant smile, but it's real. Okay, yeah, okay, when do we start? Tomorrow, Catherine says. First thing. Over the following days, weeks, and months, the barn slowly transforms, and so does Catherine. The work is harder than anything she's ever done. Her hands, once manicured and soft, become calloused and scarred. Her back aches. Her muscles scream. She learns to mix mortar, to select and place stones, to read the structure and understand where it's weak and where it's strong. Jamie teaches her patiently, and Catherine discovers she's a good student when the subject matters to her. They start with the roof. It's the most critical repair. Without a roof, the barn will continue to deteriorate. They hire a local contractor to help with the structural work, replacing rotted beams with reclaimed timber from a demolished barn nearby. Catherine insists on doing as much of the work herself as possible. She climbs scaffolding, hauls materials, hammers nails until her arms shake. It's exhausting. It's also exhilarating. As they work, Catherine and Jamie talk, not constantly. Sometimes they work in comfortable silence for hours, but gradually they share their stories. Jamie talks about the divorce that destroyed her financially, the depression that followed, the slow slide from middle-class stability to homelessness. Catherine talks about Michael, about the company, about the emptiness of success without someone to share it with. They don't offer each other advice or platitudes, they just listen. And somehow, that's enough. The barn becomes a kind of therapy. Every stone Catherine places, every beam she helps lift into position, feels like she's building something inside herself too. The physical exhaustion is cleansing. At night, she sleeps deeply for the first time in years, her body tired in a good way, a earned way. She rents a small cottage in the nearby town, but spends every daylight hour at the barn. Slowly, the structure stabilizes. The roof is completed, not with modern materials, but with reclaimed slate tiles that match the original aesthetic. The walls are repaired, stone by stone, weak sections rebuilt. They install new windows, simple but well made, that let light flood the interior. The floor is leveled and covered with wide plank reclaimed wood. The massive beams are cleaned and treated, their age and character preserved. Catherine makes decisions based not on efficiency or cost, but on what feels right. She wants to honor the barn's history, to preserve its character while making it functional. She's not trying to turn it into something modern and sleek. She's trying to save something old and beautiful from disappearing. As the barn takes shape, something unexpected happens. Word spreads in the small community. People start stopping by, curious neighbors, local craftspeople, elderly farmers who remember when the barn was working. They offer advice, share stories, sometimes just watch for a while. An old man named Frank, who's 87, tells Catherine that his grandfather helped build this barn in 1847. He has tears in his eyes as he walks through it, touching the stones, remembering stories his grandfather told him. "I thought this place would be torn down," he says. "Thank you for saving it." Catherine realizes she's not just rebuilding a barn. She's preserving a piece of community history, a connection to the past that matters to people. It gives the work even deeper meaning. One day, about 8 months into the project, Catherine is working alone in the barn. Jamie has gone to town for supplies. She's repairing a section of the stone wall on the interior, carefully fitting stones into gaps. It's meditative work, requiring focus and patience. As she removes a loose stone, she notices something behind it, a small, hollow space in the wall, and inside, a metal box. Her heart quickens. She carefully removes more stones, creating an opening large enough to reach in and pull out the box. It's old, rusted, about the size of a shoebox. There's no lock, just a simple latch. She sits on the floor, the box in her lap, and opens it. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, are letters. Dozens of letters tied with faded ribbon. She carefully unfolds one and reads. It's dated 1863, written in elegant script. "My dearest Thomas, the war continues, and I fear for you every moment. The farm is struggling without you, but we manage. Your father and I work from dawn to dusk. The barn you built before you left stands strong. It is the heart of everything we do. Please come home safe. All my love, Margaret." Catherine reads letter after letter, their correspondence between Margaret and Thomas during the Civil War. Thomas was the son of the Irish immigrants who built the barn. He went to fight, leaving his young wife and parents to run the farm. The letters span 2 years, filled with love, longing, fear, and hope. The last letter is different. It's from Margaret to Thomas, but it was never sent. It's dated 1865. "My beloved Thomas, they told me you fell at Petersburg, that you died bravely. I cannot accept it. I will not. I have hidden these letters in the barn you built, in the walls that hold our dreams. If you somehow return, you will find them and know I never stopped loving you, never stopped waiting. If you don't return, perhaps someday someone will find them and know that we existed, that we loved, that our lives mattered." Catherine sits in the barn, tears streaming down her face, holding letters written over 150 years ago by a woman who lost everything. She thinks about Margaret, about the grief she carried, about how she kept the farm going, kept the barn standing, kept living even when her heart was broken. She thinks about Michael, about her own grief, about how she ran from it instead of facing it. And she realizes something. She's been so focused on what she lost. Michael, the life they planned, the eventually that never came, that she forgot what she still has. She's alive. She has the capacity to feel, to build, to connect, to matter. Michael is gone, and that will always hurt. But she's still here, and she gets to decide what to do with that. She carefully wraps the letters back in the oilcloth and places them in the box. These letters belong to this barn, to this land. She'll preserve them, maybe frame some, maybe donate them to the local historical society, but they'll stay connected to this place, just as Margaret intended. When Jamie returns, Catherine shows her the letters, tells her the story. They sit together in the barn, in the space they've rebuilt together, and talk about loss, about grief, about how we carry the past with us but don't have to be crushed by it, about how sometimes the act of building something, of creating something with our hands, can heal wounds we didn't know how to address any other way. The barn restoration takes 14 months total. When it's finally complete, Catherine stands in the doorway, the same doorway where she stood that first day, and looks at what they've created. The barn is beautiful. The stone walls are solid, repaired with care and skill. The roof is sound. The interior is open and light-filled, the massive beams dramatic against whitewashed walls. She's installed a small kitchen area, a bathroom, a sleeping loft. It's not a house exactly, but it's a home. Her home. Jamie has moved into the cottage in town. Catherine helped her get it, paid the first year's rent, helped her start a small restoration business. They're still friends, still work together sometimes. But Jamie needed her own space, her own independence, and Catherine needed to learn to be alone without being lonely. Catherine doesn't return to the city. She stays in the barn, living simply, working with her hands. She takes on small restoration projects in the area, using the skills she learned. She's not trying to build another empire. She's just trying to live a life that feels real, that feels meaningful on a human scale. She thinks about Michael often, but differently now, not with the crushing grief that paralyzed her, but with gratitude for the years they had, with acceptance that he's gone, with peace that she's still here, and that's okay. She talks to him sometimes in the barn, telling him about her day, about the work she's doing, about the person she's becoming. She likes to think he'd be proud of her, not for the company she built, but for the courage it took to walk away from it, to start over, to choose peace over prestige. The barn has become a gathering place. Catherine hosts dinners for neighbors, workshops for people interested in traditional building techniques, quiet afternoons where people just come to sit and enjoy the space. The barn that was dying, forgotten, has become alive again, serving a new purpose, connecting people, creating community. One evening, as the sun sets and golden light fills the barn, Catherine sits in a chair by the window, a cup of tea in her hands, looking out at the hills. She thinks about that first day, standing in the ruins, feeling broken and lost. She thinks about every stone she placed, every beam she lifted, every moment of doubt and exhaustion and small triumph. She thinks about Margaret's letters, about lives lived and lost, about how we're all just trying to matter, to leave something behind, to love and be loved. And she realizes she's found what she was looking for. Not in the barn itself, but in the process of rebuilding it. Peace isn't something you achieve or acquire, it's something you create day by day, choice by choice, stone by stone. It's in the work of your hands, the connections you make, the decision to keep going even when you're tired, even when you're grieving, even when you don't know if it will work out. This barn tells a story. It tells the story of Irish immigrants who built something to last. It tells the story of Margaret and Thomas, of love and loss. It tells the story of Jamie finding refuge in ruins. And it tells Catherine's story of a woman who had everything the world values and discovered it wasn't enough, who lost what mattered most and thought she'd never recover, who found healing not in running away, but in the simple, hard work of rebuilding something broken. Every stone in these walls carries history, every beam holds memories, and the barn as a whole speaks to something essential about the human experience, that we break, we fall apart, we crumble under the weight of time and loss and change. But we can also be rebuilt, not to what we were before, but into something new, something that honors the past while embracing the present, something that stands strong, not despite our cracks, but because of them. But one question remains unanswered, a question that invites reflection. How many of us are living in our own ruins, surrounded by the crumbling walls of lives we built but no longer fit, too afraid or too tired to start the hard work of rebuilding? How many of us are chasing, eventually, postponing peace, waiting for the right time that may never come? As darkness falls and Catherine lights the lamps in her barn, the warm glow visible across the fields, she knows she made the right choice. Not the easy choice, not the expected choice, but the right one. She quit everything, the power, the prestige, the identity she'd built over 30 years, and found something infinitely more valuable. She found herself. She found peace. She found home. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more explorations of forgotten places and transformed lives. In the comments, tell us, do you know of an abandoned place with a story to tell? Hit the bell to be notified when we explore the next mystery. Until the next journey.